The scorching afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the affluent neighborhood. In front of one of the city's most expensive and imposing mansions, a line of laborers stood waiting at the gate. Two armed guards were positioned there, their faces etched with severity and their eyes radiating an unmistakable coldness. They scrutinized each worker from head to toe before granting permission to enter. Among the queue stood a lean, thin man with a worn-out bag slung over his shoulder and an old hammer clutched in his hand. His clothes were covered in dust, his shoes torn and tattered, yet there was an unusual serenity and depth in his eyes. This was Ibrahim Traoré, disguised as a common laborer. As Ibrahim approached the gate, one of the guards eyed him suspiciously. "Name?" the guard demanded. Ibrahim lowered his head and spoke in a soft voice. "There's no need to write down my name. I'm just here to work. I'll lend my hands in exchange for wages." The guard let out a contemptuous laugh. "Not just anyone can enter here. This isn't an ordinary house. Important people live here." Ibrahim reached into his pocket and pulled out a sweat-stained piece of paper. "The owner himself summoned me." The guard took the paper, examined it for a few moments, and gestured to his colleague. "Let him through." Upon entering, Ibrahim was struck by an extraordinary sight. What appeared ordinary from the outside resembled a fortress within. High walls were equipped with hidden cameras that swiveled at the slightest movement. In one corner of the lawn, laborers were stacking bricks, while in another section stood an expensive black car surrounded by three men engaged in hushed, secretive conversation. Their accent was foreign, not the local dialect, but something entirely different. Ibrahim joined the other laborers and began lifting bricks. One worker noticed him and asked, "Where are you from, brother? Your face looks new here." Ibrahim bent down to pick up a brick and replied with a slight smile. "Just searching for work, that's all." Another laborer spoke up. "This house is strange. The owner never shows his face, and at night odd sounds echo through the place, like machines running or experiments being conducted." Ibrahim feigned surprise. "Why would there be machines in such a large house?" The laborer whispered, "We're just poor people. We observe and keep quiet, but I believe these people are involved in something big." Ibrahim's ears perked up immediately. He glanced around and noticed that adjacent to the main building was a small door that kept opening and closing periodically. The people entering weren't ordinary laborers. They wore dark sunglasses and carried small briefcases. Their steps were purposeful, their eyes concealing secrets. At that moment, a guard approached and spoke curtly to the workers. "Stay here. Don't try to go inside. Do only what you're told. No need to ask questions." Ibrahim lowered his head, thinking to himself, "Something here is definitely not ordinary." As the sun began to set, the sweat-drenched laborers were exhausted, but Ibrahim's mind was preoccupied with that mysterious door and the strange visitors. He knew that behind these walls lay a secret the world couldn't see. This was the moment when his eyes began to reflect not just a laborer, but an investigator and a warrior. The cool night air descended upon the mansion's walls and settled across the lawn. Laborers began leaving one by one, but Ibrahim made an excuse. "I still have some work left. I've been working since morning. I'd like to settle the evening's accounts as well." The guard glared at him, but eventually shrugged. Ibrahim seized this opportunity and quietly made his way toward the main building. He approached the small door where strangers had been coming and going all day. As the door opened, a thin line of light fell across the floor. Ibrahim held his breath and silently peered inside. A narrow corridor led downward. The stairs were solid, but the walls were lined with dim electric bulbs that gave the impression of a basement. He carefully placed his foot on the first step and began descending. Upon entering the underground chamber, the scene was completely different. It was a vast room filled with modern computers, large screens, and flickering blue lights. Maps covered the walls, marked with red circles indicating various countries. Laptops on the tables displayed scrolling code in Hebrew and English. 4 men sat in the center of the room, their faces stern. One removed his dark glasses and spoke, "When will the remaining preparations for Operation Shell be completed?" The second man's voice was sharp. "The drone is ready. The first test explosion will occur next week. The target has been chosen in the city's outskirts, so no one will suspect anything. The third added, the kidnapping plan will proceed simultaneously. That's our real objective. The rest are just intimidation tactics. Ibrahim began reciting prayers silently, a cold wave running through his body, though his face remained composed. Suddenly, a voice rang out. "Hey! Did anyone sense movement outside?" It was the fourth man, staring intently at a screen. He pressed a button, and camera footage from the room's corner appeared. Ibrahim immediately dropped the brick from his shoulder to the ground to appear like an ordinary laborer. Hearing the noise, someone inside said, "Probably just a worker. Their footsteps have a different pattern. Don't worry." Ibrahim's eyes swept to another section of the room where large containers were stored, marked with hazardous material symbols. One container's lid was half open, revealing small black drones arranged in rows, accompanied by gleaming batteries and delicate explosive equipment. The conversation inside continued. "We've already bought 2 local government officials. There will be no obstacles. If the mission succeeds, fear will spread throughout the entire region. Then the ground will be clear for us," one said while lighting a cigarette. Ibrahim wanted to jump out and confront them immediately, but he knew this wasn't the time. He needed evidence to ensure this wasn't mere suspicion, but became an undeniable reality before the world. He scraped dirt with the heel of his shoe and dropped a small piece of paper on the ground with a secret marking. This was his method to remember the location when he returned. He began retreating toward the stairs with quiet steps. Another voice came from inside. "Tomorrow night there will be another meeting. We'll finalize the details then." Ibrahim's heart was racing. He now knew this wasn't merely some rich person's house, but the headquarters of a major conspiracy. The next morning, laborers gathered again inside the mansion. A pile of bricks sat on the lawn, but Ibrahim's eyes repeatedly fixed on that same door he had seen the previous night. He was determined to uncover more of the mystery today. As the guard began sending other workers to carry materials, Ibrahim quietly changed his path and headed toward that door. This time, there was no need to enter the room. The door was half open and a faint humming could be heard from inside. Not the sound of a fan, but the whirring of machine parts. He pressed forward and entered cautiously. In one corner of the room lay those same black containers he had seen the night before, but now the lids were completely open. Inside were small but deadly drones arranged systematically. Black metal wings, delicate propellers with glowing red lights, and below them, small machine guns mounted. Fine wires connected them to explosive materials. The sight made Ibrahim's eyes widen. 2 men were present in the room. One placed a drone on the table and began testing its wings. A light whistling sound emerged, and the wings started spinning rapidly. The second man, sitting before a laptop, said, "This little bird can travel up to 50 kilometers. No one will even know, and then it will go straight to the target and explode." The first man smiled and added, "This isn't an ordinary drone. It records high-frequency sounds along with camera footage. It can see even in the darkness of night, like a hawk swooping down on its prey." Ibrahim concealed his perspiration while lifting a basket of bricks onto his shoulder to maintain his laborer disguise. At that moment, another man entered. He spoke in a secretive manner. "Tonight there will be a test flight. We'll send the drone to a deserted part of the city. If it succeeds, then we'll move toward the real target." The laptop operator clicked rapidly, and a map appeared on the screen showing the city's streets with a large red mark. "Look here. When this explodes tomorrow, the entire block will be destroyed in just 5 seconds. Ibrahim's heartbeat accelerated. He realized these people weren't involved in ordinary criminal activity, but were using advanced technology to turn the city into a battlefield. Suddenly, a laborer entered and stammered, "Sorry, the master said to place this equipment outside on the lawn." He left immediately. The men inside became alert and glared at each other. "These laborers wander around too much. We need to be careful. If anyone becomes suspicious, we'll make them disappear immediately." Ibrahim lowered his head and quietly exited. The humming of the drone's propellers still echoed in his ears like a bird of death preparing for flight. He thought to himself, "This secret cannot remain hidden. I must find a way to stop it." The harsh afternoon sun gleamed off the mansion's white walls. All the laborers, drenched in sweat, were lifting bricks and stacking them in a corner. Ibrahim also had a basket on his shoulder, but his eyes kept drifting toward that basement door. He deliberately tried to appear as an ordinary laborer, but his heart was consumed with thoughts of those drones and their sinister plans. On the other side of the lawn, a guard was continuously staring at him. He paid no attention to the other laborers. Only Ibrahim held his gaze. He repeatedly took drags from his cigarette, exhaling smoke while muttering under his breath. After setting down the bricks, Ibrahim began wiping his sweat. Then a laborer approached and said, "Brother, it seems you have some particular worry. You keep looking over there. Is everything all right?" Ibrahim smiled and replied, "Just exhausted." "Didn't get rest last night either." The laborer shrugged. "The guards here are strange. They stare all the time. It feels like we're not laborers but prisoners." At that moment, the same guard approached. With stern steps and a taunting voice, he said, "You're new here, right? You're very quiet. Which village are you from?" Ibrahim lowered his eyes and responded, "What will you do knowing my village name, sir?" "I came here for work." "I'm working." "I'll take my wages and leave." The guard narrowed his eyes. "Your face looks familiar somehow, but I can't remember where." Ibrahim immediately picked up another basket of bricks and said, "There are thousands of laborers like me, sir. Every face looks the same." The guard stepped back but didn't avert his gaze. He was still watching Ibrahim. Toward evening, when the laborers were given tea, everyone sat together on one side. Ibrahim had just picked up his cup when that same guard approached again. He slowly walked over and sat down next to Ibrahim. In a low voice, he said, "Listen, I saw you wandering around here last night. Laborers don't go near the basement. Those who go there meet a bad end. If you value your life, keep your eyes down and just lift bricks." Ibrahim remained silent and simply nodded. Suddenly, another guard arrived and said, "This new laborer doesn't seem right. He keeps peering around. Could he be a spy?" The first guard looked at him for a few moments, then said, "Leave him alone for now. If he wanders around again tomorrow, we'll inform those inside directly. Then he won't remain a laborer. He'll become a bird, and a bird only flies once." Hearing this, Ibrahim silently recited prayers. Eyes were fixed on him. One small mistake could expose everything. But he maintained the same tired, humble expression on his face. Time was running short. These people were suspicious. His next step would need to be extremely calculated. Evening was falling. Laborers began leaving the mansion's lawn one by one. The sky was tinged with red, and in the distance the call to prayer echoed. Ibrahim had also set down his basket, but deliberately slowed his pace so he could linger after everyone else had left. The guards were busy, some at the gate, others in the interior sections. Seizing the opportunity, Ibrahim moved toward the corner of the lawn where that small door stood. The door was half open, and moderate voices could be clearly heard from inside. He quietly positioned himself in the shadow of the wall. Inside, 4 men sat discussing matters. Maps were spread across the table before them, and on a large screen appeared the photograph of someone. Ibrahim tilted his neck slightly and saw it was an African military officer. Below the image was written, "Target SO7 Sahel Zone." A man with a harsh, non-local accent spoke. "The drone attack is just a pressure tactic. The real objective is to capture that officer alive. When he's in our custody, the entire system will be in our hands." The second man said, "But kidnapping won't be easy. He has military protection around him constantly." The first man smiled and replied, "That's precisely why we've devised this plan. First, the drone will attack from one direction to create noise and chaos. At that very moment, our team will enter from the other side and quietly put the target in a vehicle." Sweat appeared on Ibrahim's forehead. He realized this operation wasn't just about explosions. It was a scheme to hold the country's leadership hostage. The third individual, holding a cigarette, said, "And if there's resistance?" The fourth interrupted, "We have technology and weapons that can shut down the electrical system in an instant. No cameras will work, no wireless communication. They'll be trapped in darkness, and we'll have our opportunity." Ibrahim pressed his ear against the wall. His heart wanted to burst in and destroy everything, but he knew now wasn't the time. He needed to get this information out to the world. Another voice emerged from inside. "Tomorrow night will be the final rehearsal. After success, we'll receive substantial payment. The Israeli network has assured us that everything will be covered. No one will even know we're here," another added with a sneer. "What will these Africans understand? We play with technology while they're still holding shovels." Ibrahim clenched his fists at this remark. Fire blazed in his eyes. He had decided. He needed to show them that laborers also observe, understand, and fight back when the time comes. Suddenly, the sound of a guard's footsteps approached. Ibrahim immediately crouched down and began picking up bricks as if he had simply come to inspect the materials. The guard cast a suspicious glance and said, "Still here?" "Everyone else has left," Ibrahim feigned breathlessness. There was too much material. "Got delayed." "Leaving now, sir." The guard shrugged and walked away. Ibrahim heard one last comment from inside. "Remember, if the kidnapping doesn't succeed, the entire mission will be worthless. Everything will be decided tomorrow." Ibrahim knew time was short and the stakes were enormous. He had made his decision. He would no longer just observe, but would become the one to stop this operation. Night had deepened. The mansion's lights were moderate, but faint illumination still flickered from the interior rooms. Ibrahim, still in his laborer's clothes, was sweeping the outer veranda to ensure his presence didn't appear suspicious. Suddenly, his eyes fixed on a window where the curtain wasn't completely closed. Below the light, papers were scattered across a large table, and 4 individuals were huddled over them, whispering. Ibrahim cautiously approached and stood in the shadow of the wall, peering inside. The topmost file on the table bore large English letters, "Master Plan Operation Falcon." A man with blonde hair and glasses pointed to marks on a map and said, "This is the first point. The drone's initial attack will occur here. The objective isn't to kill, but to create noise and panic." The second man, whose accent sounded somewhat Arabic, asked, "And where will the actual kidnapping take place?" The first man turned to the second page of the file and drew a circle around a location. "This is the internal route where there will be minimal guards. The team will infiltrate from here. The target must be subdued and brought to the waiting vehicle within 5 minutes. Sweat poured from Ibrahim. He focused his gaze more intensely. The third section of the file detailed advanced weapons and technology. Written clearly were the words, "EMP device," to disable cameras and communication systems within a 2-kilometer radius. The third individual, taking drags from a cigarette, laughed and said, "So when this device activates, the entire city will plunge into darkness. No one will be able to make calls. Wireless won't work. They'll see everything with their own eyes, but won't be able to do anything." The fourth person, who had been mostly silent until now, spoke. "But if there's resistance, the military is nearby." The man with glasses replied, "That's why we have a backup plan." He opened the file's last page. Ibrahim listened with complete attention. "The plan is this. If the direct kidnapping doesn't succeed, we'll send a fake ambulance. In the chaos of casualties, our target will be placed in the ambulance, and no one will suspect a thing." Ibrahim drew a sharp breath. This wasn't just a kidnapping, it was a web with multiple routes. Every potential failure had an alternative strategy ready. Another person said, "And if the media spreads the news?" The blonde-haired man laughed. "The Israeli network has promised to spin the narrative so it appears to be the work of local terrorists. The international community won't be able to raise a finger." Ibrahim's hands began trembling. He knew this file wasn't just paper, it was the blueprint of an approaching storm. If he could somehow get this file outside, the truth could be exposed. But the question remained, how would this be possible under such tight surveillance? Suddenly, one of the men inside lifted his head as if sensing someone's presence. Ibrahim immediately crouched down and began sweeping the floor. From behind the curtain, someone opened the window. A gust of cold air arrived, and the last sentence reached Ibrahim's ears. "Tomorrow night, everything is set. If this plan succeeds, all of Africa will be at our feet," he muttered in frustration. "No matter how secret this file is, this secret won't remain confined to just them anymore." The silence of night was punctuated by the deep rush of wind. Clouds moved rapidly across the sky, and in one corner of the city, that mansion presented a unique spectacle with its lights. Ibrahim stood at the edge of the courtyard, still in his laborer's disguise, when suddenly a sharp whistling sound pierced the atmosphere. He looked up to see a black shadow floating across the sky, descending lower. It was a drone with a small red light glowing beneath it. Inside the room, those same 4 men he had seen before were now standing, gesturing to each other. One held a remote control resembling a mobile device and pressed a button with his finger, saying, "This is the first glimpse. Everyone stay ready." Ibrahim's eyes widened. As the drone descended, a sudden explosive sound erupted. The ground shook. Window panes began rattling, and leaves from a nearby tree cascaded downward. With the explosion, dust, smoke, and the smell of burning gunpowder filled the air. Ibrahim crouched down, covering his head with both hands. His ears rang with intense reverberation. He thought to himself, this was just a test. If the real attack happens, the entire area will be reduced to rubble. From inside the room, a man's laughter could be heard. "Brilliant! Just 2 kilos of explosives and this impact. Tomorrow, when we use the full package, people won't even comprehend where it came from." The second man said, "The drone was so high that no one detected where the attack originated. This is just a preview. The real attack will involve 5 drones simultaneously." The third, who always spoke cautiously, said, "But the noise was too loud. The laborers, servants, and nearby residents must have heard. If anyone becomes suspicious..." The man with glasses smiled and said, "Don't worry. The explosion will be reported as a gas cylinder accident. The media is ours. People will believe it. Tomorrow the real game begins. After that, every voice will be silenced." Ibrahim lifted his head after the smoke cleared and saw that a small crater had formed beyond the wall. Stone fragments were scattered everywhere and soil was spread all around. This scene instilled in Ibrahim's heart both fear and a strange courage. He muttered, "This explosion is merely a preview. In the real attack, countless innocents will be killed. If I remain silent, everything will be destroyed." Suddenly, he saw a servant running over with a frightened voice asking, "Master, where did this explosion come from? Is everything all right?" From inside, that same person roared, "Shut up!" Nothing happened. A cylinder burst. No one should spread word outside. Ibrahim memorized this statement. This was the same lie they would tell the public. His eyes drifted back to the sky where that drone was disappearing into the smoky shadows. Sometime later, the echo of the explosion still lingered in the night air. The smell of gunpowder and smoke had permeated the atmosphere. Ibrahim quickly gathered his tools into a sack and began moving toward the other corner of the courtyard to quietly exit the mansion. But just as he approached the door, a heavy voice boomed from inside. "Stop! Who are you?" Ibrahim's steps froze. Before him stood a tall, broad man. His eyes bore into Ibrahim with suspicion. This was Faraz, who appeared to be a key figure in these covert operations. In his hand was a modern flashlight whose bright beam exposed Ibrahim's face. Faraz spoke in a stern tone. "You're a laborer, but why is there such turmoil in a laborer's eyes? How did you get here first after the explosion?" Ibrahim took a deep breath and, making his tone sound ordinary, said, "Master, I was just gathering my tools." Hearing this noise frightened me. "I'm a laborer, came to check on my work." Faraz's eyes narrowed. He approached closer and said threateningly, "If even one word about what happened here gets out, your breath will be cut off." Fear and anger rose simultaneously in Ibrahim's heart, but he maintained a calm expression. He slowly lowered his head and said, "I know nothing, master. I'm a laborer. My work is just labor." But Faraz wasn't convinced. He suddenly turned and called to the other guards, "Keep an eye on this one. This person doesn't seem ordinary." Ibrahim seized the moment and quickened his steps, exiting through the door and moving into the darkness of the alley. But behind him, the sound of footsteps and loud voices began echoing. Faraz himself had begun the pursuit. The city's deserted alleys, flickering lights on electrical poles, and somewhere in the distance, barking dogs made the scene even more terrifying. Ibrahim ran through the winding alleys, turning left then right. Sweat droplets flowed from his forehead into his eyes, but he couldn't afford to stop. Faraz's voice echoed, "Stop, or your end will be bad." Ibrahim thought to himself, "If I stop now, The truth will never reach the world. He attempted to enter a narrow alley, but 2 guards blocked his path. Ibrahim threw his bag of tools at them and ran in the opposite direction. The guards stumbled and fell. Faraz roared in anger. "Catch him! He knows everything!" Ibrahim climbed the stairs of an old building in the darkness. From there, the city's lights were visible far and wide. He turned to look. Faraz and his men were closing in. His heartbeat had accelerated, but determination shone in his eyes. He told himself, "This pursuit won't end. If I want to survive, I must use both intelligence and timing correctly." At that moment, a cat darted through the darkness, creating a commotion. The guard's attention was diverted. Ibrahim seized this golden opportunity, leaped to the other side of the roof, and vanished into the shadows. Faraz clenched his fists in anger and said, "This man slipped through our hands, but he won't survive much longer." The night's chill had settled into the air. After running continuously through numerous alleys, darkness, and old buildings, Ibrahim finally reached a deserted area. There stood a dilapidated door with old nails embedded in wooden planks. The wall was covered with moisture and moss in various places. With his heart pounding, he gently knocked on the door. 2 light taps, then a pause, then 3 quick ones. This was the secret signal recognized only by trustworthy individuals. A gruff voice came from inside. "Who is it?" Ibrahim caught his breath and quietly replied, "The one who went in the disguise of a laborer." Moments later, the sound of a chain unlocking could be heard. A thin, lean man whose beard showed streaks of white opened the door. His eyes held both surprise and sternness. "Ibrahim, at this hour, in this condition, blood. What is all this?" Ibrahim entered, and as the door closed, he sat down on a wooden chair. He was out of breath, his clothes covered with dirt and sweat. With his head lowered, he said, "There's no time, teacher. Everything I saw there is enough to shake the world." The teacher lit a lamp. Moderate yellow light spread through the room. The room was small but sturdy, with maps on the walls, some closed files, and a broken radio on a table. The teacher asked worriedly, "Tell me the details. What did you see?" Ibrahim spoke in a trembling voice. "Secret rooms, suspicious people, drone designs, and kidnapping plots. Everything is hidden there. They're preparing weapons that can destroy any city in moments." The teacher looked at Ibrahim in shock. "Are you certain?" Ibrahim pulled out a small notebook from inside his shirt, where he had hastily noted several secret codes and symbols. Placing it on the table, he said, "This is just a glimpse. If we don't act in time, much will be lost." The teacher examined the notebook carefully, then took a deep breath. "Ibrahim, you know how dangerous this path is. Those people are after you. If something happens to you, this secret will be buried." Ibrahim lifted his head, light shining in his eyes. "I saw fear in their eyes today. They know the truth might get out. I went as a laborer, but now it's my duty to show the world their plans." At that very moment, there was another faint sound at the door, as if someone had scratched nails on wood from a distance. The teacher looked at Ibrahim in alarm. Both fell silent. The lamp's flame flickered slightly. The teacher whispered, "This place was secure, but it seems they've tracked us here." Ibrahim clenched his fist and said softly, "Then we must still take the next step." The atmosphere was thick with silence and the scent of danger, as if every shadow could transform into an enemy. Ibrahim and the teacher sat in that secret refuge late into the night. The lamp's light had dimmed, and outside, rain droplets were striking the roof. Ibrahim, hunched over the table, flipped through pages of the notebook and said, "These aren't just codes, teacher. This is an entire network, an Israeli network. I heard their people talking to each other. They were speaking in Hebrew and repeatedly mentioning Operation Jerusalem." Concern deepened on the teacher's face. He quickly examined the notebook and then looked into Ibrahim's eyes. "Are you certain? This isn't some ordinary gang? These are people who can shake the entire world for their objectives." Despite his exhaustion, Ibrahim spoke in a firm tone. "I myself saw a sticker on their drone. It was written in Hebrew letters with a serial code. This is the biggest proof of their connection. They want to turn this country's land into their war base." The teacher pointed to a map on the table. "Look at this. These locations are their communication centers. Mostly old warehouses and empty factories. They've chosen places where police or military rarely go. Ibrahim nodded. I stepped inside one of their warehouses disguised as a laborer. There were cameras in every corner, but all eyes were focused on external surveillance. Inside, they were openly conducting their operations as if they had no fear at all. The teacher took a deep breath. Now this is our test. If we don't expose this network, they'll take thousands of lives. Ibrahim clenched his fist. I went as a laborer so I could peer into their hearts. And what I saw is horrifying. They don't just have drones, they have an entire command system with servers controlled from foreign countries. The lamp's flame flickered slightly, as if a gust of wind had entered. The teacher listened carefully outside, then said quietly, "We need to hurry. It's possible they're listening to our conversation even now." Ibrahim picked up the notebook from the table and put it in his pocket. "I didn't come here to hide, teacher. I need to bring this evidence before the world. This isn't just a conspiracy. It's a complete network targeting our children, our cities." The teacher placed a hand on his shoulder and said softly, "Remember, death will shadow your every step. But if you've set out with the truth, this path will never be easy." Ibrahim closed his eyes and nodded. Those moments were replaying in his mind, when he had seen those people in the secret room making drone and kidnapping plans. Every moment was like an explosive reality. Silence had deepened in the room. The sound of rain outside had stopped, but the whispers of danger hidden in the darkness were growing louder. Ibrahim knew that taking the next step would put him directly before the Israeli network. In the deep darkness of night, the city lay wrapped in a blanket of silence. But there was no such thing as sleep in Ibrahim's eyes. He stood with the teacher on the roof of an old ruin from where the entire industrial area was visible. Below, faint glimmers of light could be seen on the warehouse roof. The teacher held binoculars to his eyes and whispered, "This is the location from where tonight's drone attack will be launched. They've chosen the timing very carefully so no one will suspect." Ibrahim adjusted the small headset in his ear and nodded. "But we're one step ahead of them. This attack won't succeed." Inside the warehouse, in one room, 3 men from the Israeli network sat. Before them, a large screen displayed a map of the city. A man with a Hebrew accent said, "The drone is ready. Just 5 more minutes. Lock on to target point 7. At that moment, Ibrahim saw the light on the device in the teacher's hand flashing. The teacher said quietly, "We've injected a virus into their system. As soon as they launch the drone, we'll hijack its control." Ibrahim breathed anxiously and looked toward the sky. Suddenly, a heavy sound echoed, and the warehouse roof began opening. From there, a black drone slowly rose upward. The whirring of its propellers shattered the night silence. The operator below smiled and said, "Target locked. 3, 2, 1. But at that very moment, a red warning flashed on the drone's screen. The operator frantically pounded the keyboard. What happened? "The system isn't responding." The second one shouted, "This is impossible! Someone has penetrated our network." Ibrahim looked at the teacher. The teacher pressed buttons on his device and said, "Now let's see where we redirect this drone." They had successfully hacked them along with their team. In the next instant, the drone suddenly changed its course. Instead of heading toward the city's sensitive area, it turned straight toward a nearby river. The terrorists below were screaming in panic, "Take control, or the entire operation will fail." A stern smile appeared on Ibrahim's lips. "This operation is already finished." Within moments, the drone crashed into the river water with a tremendous explosion. The echo of the blast shook the surrounding area, but there was no loss of life. The teacher took a breath of relief and said, "We saved hundreds of lives. But this game won't end here. They'll try again." Ibrahim slowly nodded and pointed down toward the warehouse where the terrorists were still making futile attempts to save their system. "Now we need to go there. They have more drones. If we don't finish them today, they'll attack again tomorrow." A short while later, that moment finally arrived that everyone had been waiting for. The last base of the Israeli network had been brought down. The smell of gunpowder still lingered on the ground, but as the smoke cleared, a sense of relief descended as well. Ibrahim sat on the rubble with tired steps, drenched in sweat, covered in wounds, but his eyes held the gleam of satisfaction. The teacher also came and sat nearby. A momentary silence fell between them. "It's all over," the teacher said in a heavy voice, as if a burden had lifted from his heart. Ibrahim, wiping his dust-covered hands across his face, replied quietly, "It's finished, teacher, but it has left a lesson. Whether the enemy is from outside or inside, if we don't remain vigilant, they can occupy our land, even our very breath." The teacher looked at him, pride evident in his eyes. "You accomplished what great institutions couldn't." Ibrahim picked up a broken drone lying on the ground, now merely a lifeless piece of metal. Staring at it, he said, "These machines were their weapons, but their real weapon was our negligence. If we hadn't thought in time, today these would be raining death upon our children. And indeed, if a nation's rulers become heedless, the people become defenseless." The teacher nodded slowly. "You went as a laborer, but returned as a warrior. This mission will be remembered." Ibrahim looked toward the horizon where the sun was beginning to rise. A new day was dawning, a day bought with sacrifice and courage. "The battle isn't over, teacher," Ibrahim said with determination. "As long as conspiracies against this land exist, we must remain awake." This was just one network. Who knows how many more are hidden? The teacher stood and placed a hand on Ibrahim's shoulder. "And we'll be ready for each one, because now we know. Even a simple laborer can become a nation's shield." As the sun's first rays fell upon the rubble, Ibrahim stood tall. His laborer's clothes were torn, his body exhausted, but his spirit was unbroken. He had proven that courage doesn't require a uniform, only conviction. 3 days had passed since the warehouse raid. Ibrahim sat in a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by documents, photographs, and electronic devices recovered from the operation. The teacher had arranged this temporary safe house, knowing they needed time to compile irrefutable evidence before going public. "Look at this," Ibrahim said, holding up a tablet they'd retrieved from the destroyed command center. "It contains communications dating back 6 months. Coded messages between Tel Aviv and operatives here. They've been planning this for half a year." The teacher leaned forward, adjusting his reading glasses. "What about the financial trail?" Ibrahim pulled out a stack of papers. Bank transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts, all leading back to Israeli intelligence fronts. They funneled millions into this operation. Bribes to local officials, weapons purchases, equipment. It's all documented here. He spread several photographs across the table. They showed the drones, the explosive materials, the command center's sophisticated equipment. But more damning were the images of known Israeli operatives meeting with local collaborators. These pictures alone could start an international incident. The teacher observed, his weathered face grave. "But we need more than images. We need testimony, verification, multiple sources." Ibrahim nodded. "I've been thinking about that. There was a man, one of the laborers who worked alongside me. His name was Ahmed. He saw things too, heard conversations. He was scared, but he might talk if we protect him. Can you find him? I know where he lives, but we need to move carefully. Faraz and his remaining operatives are still out there. They know someone infiltrated their operation. They're hunting for whoever exposed them." The teacher stood and walked to the window, peering through the curtain cautiously. "The authorities are already investigating the warehouse explosion. The official story is that it was a criminal gang's weapons cache that accidentally detonated. They're trying to keep it quiet." "Which is exactly what the Israeli network predicted," Ibrahim said bitterly. They knew that even if discovered, local officials would want to minimize it, avoid international embarrassment. That's why they chose this location, a country where they could operate with relative impunity. "Then we must force the truth into the open," the teacher declared. "We need to contact international journalists, human rights organizations, perhaps even the United Nations. This evidence must reach eyes that can't be bribed or intimidated." Ibrahim carefully packed the most crucial documents into a waterproof bag. "I'll go find Ahmed tonight. If he agrees to testify, we'll have a corroborating witness. Then we approach the media." "Be careful," the teacher warned. "They'll be watching for you." "I know," Ibrahim replied, checking the simple disguise he'd prepared, different clothes, a false beard, glasses. "But we've come too far to stop now." The evening call to prayer echoed across the city as Ibrahim made his way through the crowded marketplace. His disguise was working. No one gave him a second glance as he navigated the narrow streets toward the working class neighborhood where Ahmed lived. Ahmed's home was a small concrete structure in a densely packed area where families lived in close quarters. Ibrahim watched the house for an hour, ensuring no one was surveilling it. Finally, as darkness fell, he approached and knocked softly. A woman's voice called from inside. "Who is it?" "A friend of Ahmed's, from the construction site." The door cracked open, held by a chain. Ahmed's wife peered out suspiciously. "He's not here." "Please, sister. It's urgent. Where can I find him?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "The tea house on the corner. He goes there after work." Ibrahim found Ahmed sitting alone in the back of the dimly lit tea house, nursing a glass of sweet tea. He looked nervous, jumping slightly when Ibrahim slid into the seat across from him. "You!" Ahmed whispered urgently. "You're the one they're looking for. The guards have been asking about you. They say you're a spy, a terrorist." "I'm neither," Ibrahim interrupted calmly. "I'm someone who discovered what was really happening in that mansion. And you saw it too, didn't you, Ahmed?" Ahmed's hands trembled around his tea glass. "I don't know what you're talking about. The strange men. The equipment. The conversations you overheard. You told me yourself something wrong was happening there." "I was just talking," Ahmed said quickly. "I didn't see anything specific." "I don't know anything." Ibrahim leaned closer, his voice low but intense. "Ahmed, they were building weapons to kill innocent people, to kidnap government officials, to create chaos and terror. You and I both witnessed it. If we stay silent, they'll do it again somewhere else. If I talk, they'll kill me," Ahmed hissed. "They'll kill my family. You don't understand these people." "I understand them better than you think," Ibrahim said. He pulled out his phone and showed Ahmed a photograph, one of the drones loaded with explosives. This was meant to strike a crowded area. Schools, markets, homes. How many children would have died? Ahmed stared at the image, his face pale. "What do you want from me?" "Just tell the truth." "Tell what you saw and heard. We have evidence, but we need witnesses. People like us who were there, who can verify what happened." "And then what? We hide for the rest of our lives?" Ibrahim placed a hand on Ahmed's shoulder. "Or we live knowing we saved lives, that we stood up when it mattered. Your children will grow up in a safer world because you had courage." Ahmed was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. "What do I need to do?" 1 week later, the story broke simultaneously across multiple international news outlets. The evidence was overwhelming. Documents, photographs, video footage, and testimony from Ibrahim and Ahmed. Major newspapers ran front-page stories. Israeli covert network exposed in African nation. Secret drone base discovered. Plot to destabilize government thwarted. Human rights organizations called for investigations. The United Nations Security Council scheduled an emergency session. The Israeli government issued carefully worded denials, but the evidence was too substantial to dismiss. Ibrahim watched the news coverage from a secure location arranged by an international journalist who had verified and published the story. The teacher sat beside him, both men exhausted but vindicated. "They're calling you a hero," the teacher said, gesturing at the television where Ibrahim's testimony was being discussed. "I'm not a hero," Ibrahim replied quietly. "I'm just someone who refused to look away." On screen, a senior UN official was speaking. "This represents a serious violation of international law and national sovereignty. The evidence suggests a sophisticated intelligence operation designed to create instability. We are calling for a full investigation and accountability for those responsible." The teacher smiled grimly. "Your laborers' disguise fooled them. They never suspected that the man carrying bricks was actually documenting their crimes. That was their mistake," Ibrahim said. "They saw what they expected to see, a poor man, uneducated, powerless. They underestimated him." "Us," the teacher corrected. "They underestimated us. All of us who they think are beneath their notice." A knock at the door made both men tense. The teacher checked the security monitor. It was the journalist. Accompanied by several officials, "Mr. Traoré," the lead official said as they entered. "We're from the International Criminal Court. We need your full testimony. Several individuals have been identified from your evidence, and arrest warrants are being prepared." Ibrahim stood. "I'll tell you everything, But I want protection for Ahmed and his family, and for all the other laborers who might be targeted for what they witnessed. That's already being arranged, the official assured him. Your courage has exposed a significant threat, not just to this country, but to regional stability. Over the following days, Ibrahim provided detailed testimony. He described every moment of his infiltration, the conversations he'd overheard, the equipment he'd seen, the plans he'd discovered. His photographic memory and the detailed notes he'd taken proved invaluable. Ahmed testified as well, corroborating key details. Other laborers came forward, adding pieces to the puzzle. A security guard, guilt-ridden, admitted he'd known something was wrong, but had been too afraid to speak. 2 months later, international arrest warrants had been issued for 17 individuals. Several had been apprehended, including Faraz, who was captured attempting to flee across a border. Others remained at large, but their networks had been disrupted. The mansion had been seized and thoroughly investigated. The underground facility yielded even more evidence, records of other operations, lists of assets and operatives across multiple countries. The Israeli government, facing international pressure, had launched its own internal inquiry, though many doubted its sincerity. Ibrahim stood in a small ceremony where he was being recognized by local officials and international human rights organizations. He wore a simple suit, uncomfortable in the formal attire. Wishing for his workers' clothes, we honor Ibrahim Traoré, the official announced, for his extraordinary courage in exposing a dangerous conspiracy. At great personal risk, he gathered evidence that has prevented untold tragedy and brought international attention to covert operations that threaten sovereign nations. Applause filled the room. Ibrahim accepted a certificate and a monetary award, which he immediately announced would be divided among the other laborers who had helped, particularly Ahmed. I didn't do this for recognition, Ibrahim said when asked to speak. I did it because it was necessary. Because ordinary people, laborers, workers, those society often overlooks, we see things. We're in places where important people don't notice us, and sometimes we're the only ones who can speak truth to power. He paused, looking at the assembled dignitaries. But I also want to say this. The network we exposed was possible because of corruption, because officials looked the other way, because poverty made people desperate enough to assist in crimes against their own country. If we truly want to prevent this from happening again, we must address those root causes. After the ceremony, Ibrahim met privately with the teacher in a quiet garden. What will you do now? The teacher asked. You could work with intelligence services, security consultants. Many have offered you positions. Ibrahim shook his head. I'm not suited for that life. I think I'll go back to construction work. Honest labor. After everything you've accomplished? Especially after everything I've accomplished, Ibrahim replied. Someone needs to remain among the people watching, listening. The best intelligence doesn't come from sophisticated technology. It comes from people who move through the world with open eyes. The teacher chuckled. Once a laborer, always a laborer. Exactly, Ibrahim said with a smile. Though perhaps now I'll be more selective about which construction sites I work at. They sat in companionable silence, watching the sunset. The city spread out below them, peaceful and unaware of how close it had come to disaster. Do you think there are others? The teacher finally asked. Other operations like this? Undoubtedly, Ibrahim said. The world is full of conspiracies, people who believe their cause justifies any action. But it's also full of ordinary people who can do extraordinary things when necessary. Will you watch for them? Ibrahim nodded slowly. Someone has to, and perhaps others will learn from this. Will understand that vigilance isn't just the job of police or intelligence services. Every citizen has a responsibility to protect their community. 6 months had passed since the exposure of Operation Falcon. The international investigation continued, revealing tentacles of the network that stretched further than anyone had initially suspected. 3 governments had fallen or been restructured due to the corruption exposed. Intelligence cooperation among African nations had strengthened dramatically. Ibrahim had indeed returned to construction work, but his life had changed in unexpected ways. Young people sought him out for advice. Community organizations invited him to speak about civic responsibility and vigilance. A publisher had approached him about writing a book. One afternoon, as he was working on a building site, a hospital under construction, a young man approached him during the lunch break. "Mr. Traoré?" "My name is Musa. I wanted to thank you." Ibrahim looked up from his meal, wiping his hands. "Thank me? For what?" "My sister works at the government ministry. She was going to be at the location the drone was targeting. You saved her life. You saved hundreds of lives." Ibrahim felt a lump in his throat. He'd seen the statistics, read the analyses of what would have happened if the attack had succeeded. But meeting someone with a direct connection brought it home in a way abstract numbers never could. "I'm glad she's safe," Ibrahim said simply. "That's all that matters." "I'm studying security services at university," Musa continued, "because of what you did. You showed me that protecting people isn't about guns or power. It's about paying attention, about caring enough to act." After Musa left, Ahmed, who had been working at the same site, came over. "Still uncomfortable with being called a hero?" Ahmed asked, smiling. "It feels wrong," Ibrahim admitted. "I just did what anyone should do." "But most people wouldn't," Ahmed pointed out. "I almost didn't. I was ready to stay silent to protect myself. You convinced me otherwise. That's leadership, Ibrahim." That evening, Ibrahim returned to the modest apartment he now rented in a better part of town. The award money and speaking fees had improved his circumstances considerably, though he lived simply. The teacher was waiting, as he often did, with tea prepared. "I've been contacted by government officials," the teacher said without preamble. "They want to create a program, training people to recognize signs of covert operations, terrorism, human trafficking. They want you to help design it." "Me? I'm not qualified." "You're perfectly qualified," the teacher interrupted. "You did what trained intelligence officers failed to do. You saw past the surface. You thought critically. You acted courageously. That's exactly what needs to be taught." Ibrahim considered this. "Would it be for security forces?" "For everyone. Citizens, community leaders, workers in various industries. The idea is to create a network of aware, educated people who can spot problems early." "I'd want Ahmed involved," Ibrahim said, "and some of the other laborers. Their perspectives matter." "Of course," the teacher agreed. "Will you do it?" Ibrahim looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, he knew, other threats lurked. Other conspiracies waited to unfold. But also, somewhere out there, ordinary people were going about their lives. People who, if given the right tools and encouragement, could become guardians of their communities. "Yes," he said finally, "I'll do it." 3 years after the exposure of Operation Falcon, Ibrahim Traoré stood before a graduating class of community security volunteers. The program had expanded beyond anyone's expectations, training thousands across multiple countries. Terrorist attacks had been prevented, human trafficking rings disrupted, corruption exposed, all because ordinary citizens had learned to observe, question, and report. "When I put on the disguise of a laborer," Ibrahim told the assembly, "I learned something profound. I wasn't really in disguise at all. I am a laborer. That's my identity, my dignity. What I did wasn't despite being a laborer, it was because of it. Laborers go everywhere. We see everything. We're present in the most sensitive locations, yet we're invisible to those who consider themselves superior. That invisibility can be a weakness, or it can be a strength. Each of you, regardless of your profession or status, has this same power. The taxi driver who notices unusual activity, the shopkeeper who observes suspicious purchases, the teacher who identifies a student being radicalized. You are the eyes and ears of your communities. But with this power comes responsibility. Never abuse it. Never use it to settle personal scores or persecute innocent people. The goal is protection, not oppression. Security, not suspicion. We must always balance vigilance with compassion, awareness with respect for privacy. The network we stopped 3 years ago believed they were untouchable because they were sophisticated, well-funded, and connected. They forgot one simple truth. No conspiracy can succeed if the people refuse to be blind to it. So go forward with open eyes and courageous hearts. Be present in your communities. Care about your neighbors. Question what seems wrong. And when necessary, act not recklessly, but with intelligence and determination. You are not alone in this work. We are building something together, A society where ordinary people are empowered to protect extraordinary things. Peace, justice, human life. Remember always, evil succeeds when good people see but remain silent. We will not be silent. We will be vigilant. The applause was thunderous. As Ibrahim left the stage, Ahmed was waiting, now a program coordinator himself. Powerful speech, Ahmed said. Though you forgot to mention that being vigilant also means being terrified sometimes. Ibrahim laughed. That comes with experience. They'll learn. Outside, the city hummed with life. Markets bustled, children played, families went about their daily routines. Beneath this normalcy, Ibrahim knew, trained eyes watched carefully, not with paranoia, but with protective awareness. The laborers' disguise had become a movement. And Ibrahim Traoré, the man who had infiltrated a terrorist network with nothing but courage and a hammer, had helped build something even more powerful, a society that refused to be a victim. As he walked through the streets toward home, Ibrahim smiled. Tomorrow he would return to the construction site. A new school was being built. He would lift bricks, mix cement, and do honest work. But he would also watch, and if necessary, act. Because that's what ordinary people do when they refuse to be powerless. The end.